Alright everybody, how we doing today? I know, it's a bit of a different greeting. Isn't it? Isn't it? Anyway, from Reuters, it says, U.S. support for Israeli settlements renews focus on core issue in Middle East conflict. Israel's ruling right-wing government on Tuesday moved swiftly to embrace Washington's backing for Israeli settlements, even as Palestinians and Arab leaders said it was a threat to the international rule of law. Monday's announcement by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo abandoned the position that settlements in Israeli-occupied territory were inconsistent with international law, reversing a position taken by the United States President Jimmy Carter in 1978. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lost no time in making political capital out of the announcement, as he struggles to remain in power following two inconclusive Israeli elections and possible criminal prosecution over corruption charges, which he denies. I admit that I am very moved, Netanyahu said as he visited the Etzion block of settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. The Trump administration has corrected a historic injustice, Netanyahu said. This is a very great day for the state of Israel and the achievement that will stand for generations. Some Israeli analysts said the announcement had little practical effect, with settlement building already in evidence under a Netanyahu government, as it had been since the area was captured from Jordan in the 1967 war. In Geneva, the UN Human Rights Office said the settlements remain in breach of international law, echoing a position taken by the International Court of Justice in an advisory opinion in 2004. Israel disputes this, and Netanyahu cited historical and biblical links to the West Bank in supporting Jewish settlement. Palestinians say settlements jeopardize their goal of a state in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. The East Jerusalem as its capital. Here's the problem with Israel. It gets away with things that no other nation on earth would ever be allowed to get away with. And why? Because of religion, specifically by Christianity. It's by the fact that dispensational Christianity is a thing that they even get Israel. This belief that the Jews are God's chosen people, so they get certain special exemptions. The very highly inappropriate annexation of Palestine without consulting the Palestinian government or its people. And ultimately this sort of manifest destiny where they just continued capturing territory after territory, justifying it because, oh, it's a historical Jewish region. Right? But no other nation could ever get away with that. Not in the modern day. America got to get away with its manifest destiny and shooting hundreds of Indians. But in the modern day, when we have articles of international law and so forth, not to mention the United Nations, which admittedly is not doing its job, in theory, countries should not be able to get away with this shit. But they do. Because of the dispensation. They're God's chosen people. They can do what they want. Meanwhile, they end up hitting each other with rockets. Syria attacks them, they attack Syria, or some other group, and they just continually attack each other until a cycle of hatred becomes endless. It's the Ouroboros. It's the serpent eating its tail. If they continue to eat its tail, there will be no serpent. They will all kill each other. Hold back, it says. Although President Donald Trump told Netanyahu in early 2017 that he would like to see you hold back on settlement for a little bit, the intervening period has seen repeated postponement of the White House's deal of the century, peace plan. Trump has also made a succession of pro-Israeli initiatives. These include U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital in 2017, moving the U.S. Embassy to the city in 2018, and cuts in U.S. aid to Palestinians in March. Trump recognized Israel's annexation of the Golan Heights captured from Syria in 1967. Hagit Ofran, Settlements Watch director of the left-wing Israeli group Peace Now, said there were 430,000 settlers in the West Bank and 200,000 East Jerusalem, living in 132 settlements, 121 unofficial settlement outposts. About 3 million Palestinians live throughout the West Bank. If you want to know about what the deal of the century plan was, we know what it was now. We know what it is now, said Offren after Pompeo's announcement. It is to say, the Palestinians, you are not going to get any of your basic demands and rights. They're basically treating the resident Palestinians the way America treated the Indians, minus all the shooting and the killing. They're just annexing their land, saying, nope, belongs to us now because this religious book, which may or may not even be true, we can't confirm it, says that it is. It's religious dispensation. Yet another thing that we can associate Christianity and Judaism with, which historically both have been very, very negative. I mean, they use the Bible to justify slavery. They use the Bible to justify impromptu burning of so-called witches. I mean, this is just the... All it takes sometimes is one single logical stretch, and then you get to the next level. The slippery slope is real. It is not a fallacy. It gets misrepresented, but it's not a fallacy. International law. The speed and consistency of the response by Palestinian officials suggested they are familiar with the headline-grabbing Trump initiatives and have decided to frame them in a wider context. The bias of the Trump administration towards the most extreme in Israeli blinds it from seeing the basic principles of international law and consensus, said Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtaya on Twitter. Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations Riyad Mansour said he was consulting other nations at the Security Council to lobby a unified international position to confront the American illegal announcement regarding settlements. Diana Batu, a former legal advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization, said the U.S. decision had been decades in the making. Each U.S. administration since Reagan has pandered to Israel on settlements, she told Reuters. I get the sense from the Palestinian leadership's responses that they believe this issue has to be framed as not just about us, but about the world, about the world order that people believe in. When you go down this path, it isn't just about Palestine. This affects Crimea and other places around the world. I don't see how exactly, but hey, you know what? No, I really don't see how that could affect the entire world. I mean, I'm certainly one for understanding, wanting to study the butterfly effect, but I really don't see how this could extend at least any significant level. Now, if she were talking about like a sort of a cascade effect, or an effect where, you know, you set a precedent for the past, and that makes it easier for a stretch of logic to bring about a similar crime. But a direct influence or a direct effect is not likely. Anyway, facts on the ground. David Friedman, the Trump-appointed U.S. ambassador to Israel, said on Twitter that Pompeo's announcement would advance the cause of peace by creating a level playing field for future talks. To many Israeli settlers, the U.S. move simply recognized the status of settlements they regard as permanent. From the sea to the Jordan River, it belongs to the people of Israel, said Zomzi Ossi, a settler speaking near the new settlement neighborhood Ramat Givat Ziv, which is expanding along a valley in the West Bank. But yards away in Beit Izza, overlooking Ramat Gavit Ziv, and an Israeli highway built through the West Bank, retired Palestinian villager Mahmoud Salem said nothing could change the fact that the land was Palestinian. Trump doesn't own it. He has no right to give it to anybody, and he can't force its owners to leave it, he said. It's annexation. It's plain and simple annexation and manifest destiny. It's the same shit we did to the Indians. Or rather, I should say, the same shit that white settlers did to the Indians under the authority of the government. Bottom line is, we're basically seeing the same event more or less on repeat. And really, the original Israel, if it indeed existed, there is some doubt. You know what? It was destroyed years ago by the Romans. Wiped out completely. But they're just trying to make this current Israel look as much like the old one as they physically possibly can. And that's going to mean violating international law and the rights of dozens, if not thousands, if possibly even millions of Palestinians. This is the can of worms you opened, UN, when you wanted to establish a land of Israel. They could have gone to Alaska. They would have been welcomed to Alaska. There could have been a bristling Jewish community in Alaska. And I don't think anyone would have minded. But no, you had to give them a homeland. You had to go that route. You know, you just got through fighting the Nazis who said blood and soil, and now you've got a bunch of Jews who are saying blood and soil. What's with the double standard? I mean, seriously, what is with the double standard here? Oh, one group's allowed to because of religious dispensation, but the other one's not? What if the Indians start saying blood and soil here in the United States? What if the Native American Indians started crying blood and soil and wanting to build their own ethno-state? I'll bet you anything they wouldn't be allowed. Because they don't have the world's largest religion backing them up. That is not to say that I don't think the Jews deserve a homeland. I'm sure they do. Everyone deserves a homeland. Some place that they can call their own. But not if it's going to involve the ritual abuse of thousands upon thousands of your next door neighbors. That is simply unacceptable. I don't care what reason there is for it. It's not right. But Gaza and the Arab world. In Gaza, where Israeli withdrew soldiers and settlers in 2005, Palestinian student Fatima Atalia stood outside a building that was once part of the Israeli settlement Neve Dakalim, saying she looked forward to the day when the West Bank was also free of settlers. The American decision is void, she said. Settlements will be removed. We are at a university that was once a settlement, and today it is Al-Aqsa University. Wider Arab and Muslim reaction was equally condemnatory. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Gheit said such an unfortunate change in the American position would not bring Israel security, peace, or normal relations with Arab countries. Egyptian state news agency MENA quoted him as saying it would push the legions of Israeli settlers to practice more violence and brutality against the Palestinian population. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said on Twitter, "No country is above international law," and fait accompli-style declarations had no validity. Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi said a U.S. change of position on settlements would have dangerous consequences, calling the settlements illegal. He said they killed prospects for a Palestinian state existing side by side with Israel. But in U.S. allied Saudi Arabia, the state news agency did not mention the issue after a cabinet meeting focusing on criticism of Israeli air raids in Gaza. Because Israel gets to act like a rogue state with impunity. They get away with shit like that all the time, and they use their neighbors' behavior as justification. Oh, what? So two wrongs make a right? They wronged us, now we get to wrong them? All that does is create a cycle of hatred. It's Ouroboros, the snake, eating its tail. That's all that is. It's just an endless cycle of violence and hatred. Personally, I don't think that the state of Israel should exist, at least not the one that exists now, because of how it was achieved. Through what it would arguably be an illegal annexation, and then later, equally illegal, if not more illegal, manifest destiny, where the rights and privileges of thousands of people have been extremely violated. There have probably been death threats. It's no different than what the U.S. did to establish itself. You recognize one is wrong, but not the other? If it was wrong for the United States to start killing Indians and stealing their land, then it's just as wrong for modern Israel to steal the land from Palestine, because it is not the original Israel. It's just trying to look as much like it as possible. But it's just a facade. It is not the original Israel. The original Israel no longer exists, and has not existed for a long time. What you should have done is either taken Alaska's offer, or you should have just gone to Palestine and become Palestinians. You still could have been culturally Jewish, Lots of countries have multi-ethnic populations. I mean, look at America. You have a white population, you got a black population, you got a Mexican population, and for the most part, as for a majority, they pretty much get along with each other. And yet they are still relatively culturally distinct. I mean, sure, sometimes there are clashes, there are racial classes and crime statistics that come up, but a lot of the times they're exaggerated and over-sensationalized in the media. Your average black man and your average white man get along just fine. And similarly, your average Mexican man get along fine with the former too. And you actually do see some of that in the modern state of Israel. Underneath Turkey, when Turkey was running the place, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, whatever it was, the Muslims and the Jews were actually getting along. There was relative peace. Now there's not. Now there's a sense of tension hanging over the air. You can have relatively peaceful multiculturalism. It is possible. And that's what you should have had. You went the route that you should not have gone. You went blood and soil. You went blood and soil. You showed no respect for your neighbors, and you did something that I think even the Nazis themselves might have done. It's hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy at its finest. Anyway, peace.